Welcome to Studio Movie Recap. Ready for another quick rundown of an awesome movie? Let's dive right in, and if you enjoy, don't forget to like and subscribe for more recaps. Set in the 1950s, the story begins in the seemingly perfect town of Victory, located near the sun-scorched Californian desert. Life in Victory appears flawless, with its residents adhering to a daily routine. Every morning, the men head off to work at the mysterious Victory headquarters, situated on the outskirts of town, while their wives stay behind, managing household responsibilities and attending ballet classes, led by their upbeat instructor, Shelley. There's a strict rule that forbids the women from questioning their husbands about their jobs or even visiting the headquarters. Among the couples living in Victory, Alice and Jack are a particularly happy pair. They enjoy their life together and often host gatherings for their friends, including Alice's best friend Bunny and her husband. Alice often hums a particular tune while doing chores around the house. One afternoon, after ballet class, Alice and Bunny notice men in bright red uniforms helping a new neighbor move in. They also mention their friend Margaret, who was absent from class. Margaret has become something of an outcast in town due to a peculiar event. Later, while gardening, Alice sees Margaret in her yard, clutching a toy plane with her eyes closed, as though she's witnessing something unusual. Alice is curious but decides to ignore it. During dinner preparations, Alice realizes her egg carton is empty, but she quickly forgets about it when her meal begins to burn. A few days later, at a pool party hosted by Shelley, Alice hums her favorite tune until Bunny begs her to stop, saying she's tired of hearing it. Alice then realizes she doesn't even know the name of the song but can't get it out of her head. As she hums, unsettling visions flash before her eyes, but Bunny interrupts before Alice can dwell on them. At the party, Shelley and her husband, Frank, who happens to be the CEO of Victory, give a welcoming speech to the new neighbors. The event is interrupted by Margaret, who questions the real purpose behind their gathering. Her husband quickly escorts her away, and Frank tries to smooth things over, reminding everyone of their role in creating a safe and orderly community. Concerned for Margaret, Alice decides to visit her. When she arrives, she finds Margaret receiving medication from her husband. Margaret tries to confide in Alice, sharing her disturbing dreams and hinting that she's being hidden away. But before Margaret can elaborate, her husband shuts the door, excluding Alice. Later, Alice finds Jack in Frank's office, adjusting his tie. Jack approaches her with sudden intimacy, and the situation becomes more unnerving when Frank silently watches from the doorway. After a moment, Frank leaves without saying a word, and Alice decides not to mention it to Jack. The following day, while out shopping with friends, Alice brings up Margaret's strange behavior since the accident. Bunny interjects, revealing that Margaret's mishap wasn't a simple accident. She broke a critical rule by taking her son out into the desert after seeing something strange. When they found her, she was alone, holding her son's toy plane, but her son was missing. Margaret believes her son was taken as punishment. As another tremor shakes the ground, no one reacts, used to the phenomenon. Someone speculates that the men are possibly developing weapons, but Bunny quickly shuts them down, reminding the group that wives shouldn't ask too many questions. That night, Alice is plagued by unsettling dreams. The next day, in an attempt to clear her mind, she takes a ride on a trolley, staying on for the scenic route through the desert. Suddenly, she spots a plane, similar to Margaret's toy, crashing into the desert. When Alice asks the driver to investigate, he refuses, citing the rules. Defying the instructions, Alice ventures into the desert alone, eventually reaching a hill with a winding road. At the top, she discovers a strange dome. Driven by curiosity, she approaches the structure and places her hands on the glass, which triggers a series of frightening visions and Frank's voice talking about leaving chaos behind. When Alice blinks again, she finds herself back home, lying in bed, confused and disoriented. Alarmed, Alice goes to the kitchen where Jack is cooking. She realizes she must have returned home earlier but has no memory of it. When she mentions the plane crash, Jack dismisses her concerns, saying there was no crash. If there had been, everyone would know about it. Alice tries to shake off her anxiety, finding some comfort in Jack's lighthearted jokes. The next day, while cleaning, Alice experiences a terrifying sensation as if the walls are closing in on her. She blinks, and everything seems normal again. The phone rings, it's Margaret, warning Alice that they're being deceived and must escape. Unable to shake Margaret's warning, Alice attends ballet class, but things take a strange turn when her reflection in the mirror transforms into Margaret. At first, the reflection mimics her movements, but suddenly, Margaret starts banging her head against the glass. Alice screams in terror, but no one else seems to notice. When she turns around, Margaret is gone. Panicked, Alice rushes home and sees Margaret standing on her rooftop. Alice shouts for her to stop, but Margaret jumps, leaving Alice in a state of shock. Before she can react further, men in red uniforms arrive and drag Alice away. That evening, Alice tries to explain everything to Jack, but he dismisses her concerns, telling her that Margaret's husband insists she's fine and that she just had an accident while cleaning. Frustrated, Alice demands answers about Jack's job and Victory's secrets, but Jack warns her that asking too many questions could jeopardize their happiness. He leaves her alone for the night. Unable to sleep, Alice tries distracting herself with TV but starts hallucinating again, feeling as though she's drowning. Before she can fully comprehend what's happening, she blinks and finds herself standing by the window, as if trying to escape. The next morning, while tidying up from dinner, Alice notices her hands moving strangely, as if they're wrapping plastic around her body. Realizing she's losing control, she takes a deep breath. Shortly after, Jack brings Dr. Collins to check on her. The doctor attributes Alice's distress to the trauma of witnessing Margaret's fall, suggesting that sometimes stress can distort reality. He offers medication, but both Alice and Jack refuse, thinking they can manage without it. Later, Alice notices something unusual in Collins's briefcase, files about Margaret. When she inquires, Collins explains that Margaret's paranoia and emotional outbursts caused her husband to lose his job at Victory, and she was sent away for treatment. After their conversation, Collins leaves, but forgets his briefcase. Alice seizes the opportunity to search it, only for Collins to return just in time. Alice pretends to return the briefcase, and Collins leaves, none the wiser. Once he's gone, Alice looks through the briefcase and finds the documents redacted. Frustrated, she burns the files in the fireplace, sipping whiskey as she reflects on Margaret. Later, while taking a bath, Alice drinks more and sees disturbing visions, interwoven with memories of a couple embracing. Her reverie is interrupted when Jack arrives home, plays music, and unexpectedly suggests they consider having a baby. Alice agrees to think about it. That night, Alice and Jack attend a high society party hosted by Frank at a swanky restaurant. Throughout the evening, Alice grows increasingly uneasy as Frank watches her, and he has secretive conversations with Collins. As her anxiety peaks, a dancer begins performing in a way that mirrors Alice's disturbing visions. Fighting back tears, Alice begs Jack to leave, but he's too focused on Frank's big announcement. To Alice's shock, Frank calls Jack to the stage and announces his promotion. Overwhelmed, Alice rushes to the bathroom, where she sees the vision of the couple once again. Bunny follows her and scolds Alice for ruining Jack's big night, accusing her of acting childish and telling her to get it together and support her husband. Alice tries to get back to normal, but nothing feels right. Days later, Jack hosts a dinner party at their home, with Frank and Shelley as guests. As Alice prepares the meal, Frank approaches her, expressing his admiration for her and saying he believes great men can only change the world by overcoming challenges. During dinner, Alice sits at the head of the table, directly across from Frank. As the conversation lightens, Alice abruptly interrupts, questioning everyone about their pasts before coming to Victory. She points out the eerie similarities in their stories and suggests they've all been conditioned to forget the truth, just like Margaret. Jack tries to stop her, but Frank encourages Alice to continue. Alice accuses Frank of manipulating everyone and creating a false reality. Calmly, Frank turns the tables, claiming Alice is experiencing the same mental breakdown that Margaret did and even implying that she had been in his bedroom. The guests grow uncomfortable, and Shelley, clearly upset, confronts Alice before storming out with the other guests. Frank, unimpressed, tells Alice he expected more from her, further fueling her frustration. When Jack returns, he chastises Alice for ruining his night, despite her pleas for understanding. She insists they need to leave before it's too late. After much back and forth, Jack finally agrees to leave with Alice. She hurriedly packs, and they get in the car to escape. But just as they're about to leave, Jack apologizes, and men in red uniforms appear, dragging Alice away as Jack breaks down in tears. Alice is taken to a hospital, where she undergoes electroshock therapy. During the painful procedure, she has visions of her real-life self and Jack, living in a modern-day world where Jack has lost his job and Alice works grueling hours as a doctor. Their relationship is strained, with Jack becoming resentful of Alice's exhaustion and lack of affection. Jack listens to Frank's podcast, which advocates reclaiming one's true self away from societal pressures. Alice wakes up in Victory's hospital, where Dr. Collins tells her she's been fixed. She returns to her daily routine, but something is still off. One evening, Jack comes home humming the same familiar tune Alice has been hearing. That's when she realizes that Jack from her visions is real, and that he's been working on Victory's project, a simulation created to give them a perfect life. The wives in Victory are part of this illusion, while their physical bodies remain in the real world. Jack takes care of Alice's body while working a menial job in reality, spending only a few hours each day in the simulation. Alice collapses under the weight of this realization. She confronts Jack, who admits he created the simulation because their real life was miserable, hoping to give them a fairy tale ending. Furious, Alice accuses Jack of stealing her freedom. Jack tries to gaslight her into believing she's losing her mind. To her horror, she learns the children in Victory aren't real either, they're part of the simulation, too. Desperate, Jack begs for her forgiveness, holding her so tightly that Alice struggles to breathe. In a last-ditch effort to escape, Alice grabs a glass and strikes Jack, knocking him out. She doesn't realize that death in Victory also means death in the real world. As Jack dies, Frank receives the news. Bunny arrives amidst the chaos, covering Jack's body and urging Alice to leave before it's too late. Bunny reveals that she knew the truth about Victory all along but chose to stay to be with her children. Now, she pushes Alice to escape, as Jack can no longer protect her. Alice hesitates but eventually agrees. As she flees, the other residents of Victory begin to sense something is amiss, streetlights explode, and the women start noticing strange occurrences. The men try to stop Alice, but Bunny buys her time by holding them off. Alice jumps into a car and speeds off, with the men in red close behind her. A high-speed chase ensues as Alice tries to flee the town. The pursuit turns dangerous in the desert when the men start ramming her car. Dr. Collins joins the chase, but Alice skillfully maneuvers her vehicle, causing him and the others to crash. Back in town, Frank receives word of Collins's death. Shelley, overhearing the news, seizes her moment. As Frank is preoccupied, she stabs him, declaring it's her turn to lead. In the desert, Alice's car stalls, forcing her to flee on foot. The men in red chase her relentlessly. Pushing herself to the limit, Alice climbs the hill leading to the headquarters. As she reaches the dome, she has one final vision of Jack begging her to stay. The sight of the men pursuing her snaps her back to reality. Summoning her last ounce of strength, Alice touches the door, triggering a rush of memories from her real life. Everything goes dark, and Alice gasps as she finally accepts her true reality.